I'd like to introduce David to you, who has very sweetly come from Los Angeles to give this lecture and to be with us in Milan and St. Moritz, where this exhibition is going to be in the following days. So, without further ado, here's David. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you. Okay, well, these first images, these are pictures I did in the early 80s, living in the East Village in New York, 82, 83, 84. Everything was very hard-edged and punk rock at the time, so to come out with these sort of images that were sort of softer and different, and it stood out, and it caught the eye of Interview magazine, which was where I wanted to be. I mean, I loved Andy Warhol's work since I was a kid, and I wanted to be at Interview. It was a Zeitgeist magazine, and they started giving me their first jobs, and it opened the door to this other world, which was magazines. And then I started printing in color. I spent 12 years, six black and white and 6 in color. So these are actual, this is Scotch tape, and I'd make these little collages out of the negatives and little mini things that I'd paint on the negative, and then I'd Scotch tape them to a glass negative carrier. And I was just doing all this experimenting when I came back to New York after that stint in London, and spent all this time and learned how to print color. And I just learned how to manipulate color to brighten and heighten color. And part of that, I think, also was escapist too. Let's go to the next one. Again, the angel, you know, these ideas of the soul. So, and these were rose petals just placed like the rayographs onto the photographic paper and then on the negative, I painted, and these are Scotch tape again. And just would dye these negatives, manipulate them, and we'll go to the next. That's Emmanuel, who's a friend of mine, and this is again pre-digital, so you can already know that I was really interested in this idea of the magic, and so painting the halo on with a tiny little brush, and the blues, heightening the blues by painting yellow on top of the negative. By chance, I did the last portrait of Andy before he died. The last sitting is what Vanity Fair called it, because it was, although there was a couple paparazzi shots, he went to a fashion show after in between this and his death, and I asked him, I wanted him to do that thing, and he wouldn't put his finger where I wanted him to. He was kind of like, I'd put his finger in, then he'd go like that. The time working at Interview was sort of like university for me. It taught me about deadlines. It taught me, opened this world of magazines. And from that job, I started working. I just wanted to work. I just wanted to live. I wanted to survive as a photographer. And so if nobody was buying my pictures in galleries, and they certainly weren't. I mean, pictures were only $300 or $400, and it was very difficult to sell them. I couldn't survive off of them. But here was this opportunity to work for the most glamorous human being that I could think of. And as we get into the magazine years, I started photographing a lot of the people that made up the popular world of culture in the United States. Tupac Shakur and the next picture, Little Kim, as a luxury item. There were subtexts to the pictures. I don't know if people got them or not at the time. I think now in retrospect, with the new work, there's a little bit more light shined on what I was trying to do, but I was really questioning what was going on in America, the choices it was making, and but the paradox was I was working for the same magazines. And so assignments kept coming in. This was my house, this was for French Vogue, and I was making a reference to Christo in this one. It was the art issue. Suddenly art, was in fashion, and it was the art issue, and we covered the house in pink. There's misconceptions about the manipulation that occurs or the digital compositing. And the only reason I defend that or wanted to film it to show the process, because to me process is it's too much emphasis on it these days. But instead of it being made by a machine, the credit goes to my collaborators and my staff and the scenics and the painters and these people that make these things, and these events occurred, as you saw. It's the image of the cover of the book. There's very little done to it. I used retouching as a tool for digital retouching as a tool to retouch, but it's in no way photo illustrations. You just can't create something out of thin air anyway. It has to be photographed, and I don't enjoy sitting in front of a computer. I like the idea of the planning, the conception, and the shoots themselves are what really turns me on. I go to places like, that weren't, chic. I'd go to the sort of neighborhoods where all the houses look alike and everyone drives the same SUV. This is one of the last photographs I did for a fashion magazine. This was one of the last. This was called Jesus My Homeboy for ID. And ID even was like, Jesus? Like, oh, really? Oh no. And meanwhile, they don't even have you're working for free, plus you're paying all your expenses. And it was getting more and more difficult to get my pictures published. And this series was this sort of idea. I saw Jesus as my homeboy on a t-shirt, and all the fundamentalist Christians were talking about, well, what if Jesus came back? And, well, he is coming back. And I thought, well, if he is coming back, who would he hang out with? Because he's certainly not going to hang out with them. He's going to hang out with the people he hung out with sort of like the first time, which were the outcasts, which were the disenfranchised and the oppressed, and those were his apostles, and the people who thought differently. So I did this story, and the only challenge was getting it published and getting the fashions in the magazine, but I made sure to get lots of advertisers' clothes in, so this would be published. Using magazines sort of as the gallery. Magazines have become my gallery. This is a series later on. I'm skipping through decades of pictures here, but these were towards the end, and I was dealing. I ordered on eBay family photographs, and what I found was this theme of all these people drinking in every shot. So I called this Drunk Americans, and I did it for Lemo Vogue, and I had to digitally add in people to these scenes and make it look like it was part of it. It was all about the military. It was during the Bush administration. That says Bush kills, drop Bush, not bombs, on this old lady sweatshirt. And I just love that everyone's drinking cocktails. She has a rifle. I don't know. I felt the Americans were drunk with power at the time for getting everybody involved in this illicit war that's been dragging on. I mean, this is like our Vietnam. And just as a fashion artist, I mean, you don't have a very much of a voice, and nobody expects political messages to be. You're not looking for that when you look through fashion or celebrity magazine. But I did have something I wanted to say. Next. So these images caused a little bit of a stir when they came out. Putting Kahlua in the baby's bottle. So this was one family's portraits, and everyone was just drinking up a storm, and I just felt this idea of drunk with power and the whole thing. But in every shot, there's little bits of like militarism, put in too. As I got older, I was thinking about different things, thinking about about the world in a different way than I did when I was 20. When I was in my 30s, you have different chapters in your life, and you have to be true to that. You can't just repeat yourself and keep doing the same thing, and you have to be honest. And I would always get people, where do you get your ideas? Where do you get ideas? Well, they come from within. I don't go looking for them. Sometimes you just get this inspiration, and it's a beautiful thing when you get it. This next series was What Will You Wear in Heaven? The magazine rejected them. So I was getting stronger and stronger images or messages, loud and clear that my pictures weren't really fitting into the magazine format anymore. This was the last series I ever did for a magazine, last editorial. It's called House at the End of the World. You have to live under a rock not to feel or not to understand that things are changing, that we are at a time in the world's history that is precarious and the future is uncertain. Does that mean be fearful and live or be negative or be apathetic? No, it means do what you can and enjoy it. We're the children that inherited this world from the Industrial Revolution when it all started happening, when the population spiked with the discovery of fossil fuels. So it's not our fault that we're part of this system. We could live in a cave or live in a rock and not make a carbon footprint, but we wouldn't really be living. But this whole system that everything is built on comes from oil. and it comes from, fossil fuels. So here we are, we have this Earth, and yet I'm working for fashion magazines, and I want to talk about this thing that I can't get out of my head, this idea that the climate's changing, and it's one way to exercise these fears is to photograph them. This is the series downstairs, Earth, Lasts, and Flowers. We can go through these kind of quickly since you've probably seen the gallery show. The Vanitas, or the historical still lives. I love them. I love that they told stories, that the objects in the picture meant something. Even certain flowers, certainly a cobweb would mean something. Everything in those Dutch still lives or the other historical still lives had a purpose or told a story either about the person who commissioned it or about something else, and everything had a symbolic value. And today, with our disposable society, maybe no one has the time to find out what those things mean because we're so busy and we have so much to go. And we get our information from television, we get information from the internet and from our phones and our Twitters and our clitters, and and so it's sort of like the Vanitas or the still life is sort of. There's a lot of reasons I did these images. One was the chapters, the transience of life, and the finding beauty and joy in all those changes of life, because life is constant change. And like the Buddha says, the glass is already broken. The crystal glass is already broken. Either the wind knocked it over or your elbow. So appreciate it while it's still whole, because it's already broken. And those kind of things resonate with me. And I believe all religions are rivers that lead to the same ocean, and they shouldn't be used as means to separate ourselves. They should be what they were intended for, to unify people. And their true essence is there's always a seed that is very much like different prophets and enlightened people speaking to different people of different ages, using traditional symbolic or things that you'd find on those tables in the forefront of a still life, mixing it with a modern. The disposability, somehow the symbolism doesn't become as important anymore. It's just sort of a mess now. It's just sort of a little less care because the things are more disposable. Back in our grandparents' time and our parents' time, things were saved and things were lasted. But greed runs the world, and these are the same things the ancients were dealing with, the same thing the great mythologies of Greece. They were talking about, we have evolved, but with technologies and the speed of light that we travel and live at, but have we morally changed? No, because those same myths and stories and teachings of the prophets and the teachers are still true. Things that were written thousands of years ago still resonate today. I'm an artist and sort of was a calling as a young kid, and this is just, in a small way, my voice of just trying to get out what's going on in my head. I'm saying that a lot of art today, a lot of contemporary art doesn't speak to things that are happening on the. I go into gallery. I'm like, what does this have to do with? I don't, contemporary reflects the values of a society at any given time. Well, if it's reflecting our values, then we're really fucked, because it's all about the price of it, the status of owning it. I mean, every new Russian billionaire has a list of what, Koons, Prince, Hearst. It's just a shopping list, and it's a way of separating oneself from, the other rich. Like, my yacht is bigger than your yacht, and I have this and I have that. And art is not just for that. It has another purpose as well. But it is, I hope that the pendulum swings the opposite way now, and that art will start to reflect a little bit more of, give people some nourishment of what things will, nourish us, instead of just confuse us and add to the confusion and be a mirror of our times. Maybe they'll enlighten us as well. And the great thing about art is that we're all entitled to our own opinions about things, and that's our own interpretations and opinions. So thank you.